we formed a committee, and there were people who were interested. You and I we put an ad in the paper, didn't we? Anyone interested in Steiner education, and a lot of the people that were interested in independent school weren't interested in Steiner education, and so people came out of the woodwork, and so there was a committee sort of set up to start working on a school. But I think we had my memory is that we had our playgroup at Ellie's house, and she had a pretty nice setup in her garden, which sort of drew on her, I guess, Montessori background, but also, being a sort of creative person. She and Rod Moss, had a nice garden and very nice house actually that flowed into the garden, indoor outdoor thing. And so she was very generous, and we ran the playgroup there, and to sort of try out some of these principles, I guess.
And meanwhile, there was a bit of a scramble to find out exactly what those principles were.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, and I remember my sister-in-law was sending through lots of things, and there were books, and we had now what was her name? Eva Bodam and Susan Harris from Sydney, who were founders of, I can't remember which school in Sydney, but one that had been there, very well established, with a primary and secondary school, probably the first school in Australia, I think. Anyway, they came across and did the workshops at Araluen. Mount Barker was sending up people, and they did over the years to help with workshops. And there was the striving to find a location, and Ellie Moss was very active at that time. She sort of found the space at Araluen, which we were able to use for the first kindergarten. There was finding a teacher. That was a mad scramble too. And so, I think there was a core group who actually voted with their feet, and there were always people on the fringes who were interested but not game to get involved, I think. And finding Margaret McDonald, the first teacher, was very, very helpful. She actually had trained in Steiner education, and
she ran the kindergarten to begin.
Yeah, she ran the kindergarten. Yeah, and Kathy Gowdy was the assistant in the kindergarten, and she was very committed. And Margaret was a miracle, with the skill set she had of having been a nurse and worked a lot with Aboriginal people, and then gone and had this Steiner training. She was just gold, I think. I remember at the time, the sort of combination of skills that she had, and just personal qualities too.
Keeping that school going with such a small number of students and one teacher, it was a challenge, wasn't it?
Absolutely. Well, that was the kindergarten. That was the initial kindergarten, but it pretty quickly moved into a sort of a class 1-2, I think. So that sort of, increased the number of children that could be there.
Obviously, that's the thing about a Steiner school. It grows. It just keeps growing. Every year you've got a new class, and yet you've got to find the space too. So how did that work?
Well, it was a significant task for people to fit into their lives. And at the end of the school year, instead of sort of going off on holiday, you had the start date for the following year in mind, and the need for a new classroom and for desks and equipment for the classroom. And the second half of the school year was like looking at there was always planning on student numbers and teachers, and because it was a small school, there was a lot of voluntary work done by parents, and so there was a huge amount of cooperative effort involved, which, from my understanding of a lot of other schools, that wasn't necessarily the case. I know the Willunga Woolook School had a bursar on staff full time, I think, 6 months before the school started, and they always had that administrative person there, whereas we had volunteers. Our treasurer ran the finances of the school and collected school fees, and it's a complex administrative task to run a school and to grow a school. And as the school grew, we would get professional people in to run the administration, but it's still challenging too. Alice Springs is a transient town. People would come and go. You get someone very good, and they learn the ropes, and then they leave, and you start again. And it's the same with the teachers too. And with the student, lots of students came and went because their parents would leave town and go somewhere else. And I think the school now probably, and it became that way when we were involved. It starts to become part of an attraction to the town that people can send their children to a school like that.